It has been a while since I have been live. I know you can't see me, but you can see my screen. Um, this is a presentation that I put together a few years ago for my Young Living education business that I have. Basically, a lot of you know that I am a teacher at heart, but I'm also super, super passionate about healthy, non toxic living. So I'm here to talk about a life that is worth fighting for. So, as I said, I put this presentation together a couple of years ago now, but I recently shared some stats and information in my Facebook and Instagram stories that I've known since before I was even a mom. So, before Luke was even born, over 10 years ago now. And I had friends that reached out and said that they were shocked and they could not believe some of the stats that I was sharing. So I thought, you know what, now's a good time to reshare this presentation because it's still so valuable and it is still so important for moms and little ones to know. So here's my little presentation. I'm figuring out how to use Facebook and screen share all at the same time. So please forgive me if there's some errors along the way. This is like my third time trying it, just in a different spot. So let's dive in and here we go. So as you can see, when I put this presentation together, Luke and Lachlan were quite little. But my whole life of wanting this simpler life, this back to the land, this natural living lifestyle that we have started when I was pregnant with Luke, actually a little bit before. And so tonight I'm going to share a little bit of my story, but I want you guys to take a look at a really important video first. Okay, so I don't want to drag that on too long, but that every time I watch that video, I get choked up because it just hurts my heart to know what we expose our children to unknowingly. And so I want to be that friend that helps kind of open the eyes to what's going on. So let me be your friend. I always say I want to change the world one house at a time, and that's pretty corny to say, but it's the truth because it's the whole starfish story. You can't save all the starfish by throwing them all back into the ocean, but you can save the one that's in your hand. So if you're that one, let me be your friend today. So let's start with a little bit of a story. So if you're in New Brunswick, this little picture might look familiar to you. It is at King's Landing Historical Settlement. I think that's what it's called in New Brunswick. So over a decade ago now, Mitch and I went to King's Landing for the day. We had a great day exploring and kind of stepping back in time. When we were there, we walked past this beautiful garden of fresh veggies growing outside this little house. It had chickens scratching around and eating bugs, and I'm pretty sure there was a Jersey cow in the field grazing. And when we stepped into the house, the most amazing smell of freshly cooked chicken soup wafted through the air. And maybe it was just because we were hungry and we were like apartment living at the time, but it smelled so good. And the lady of the house, she took a pot off the hearth and she ladled out this incredible food for like the visiting cousin, the summer camp kids that were there. And clearly the little girl was disgusted. It wasn't the usual chicken nuggets and french fries that she was used to, but Mitch and I were drooling. It looked just as good as it smelled. So on the way back home after our visit, we talked about how far our food has come since the 18th century. We realized that society has traded fresh and healthy for quick and convenient, not just in our food, but in many aspects of life. But food was the catalyst for us. It was then that Mitch and I decided to go on what we like to call the King's Landing diet, only eat what our great grandparents would have eaten. We simply started eating local, organic, fresh, unprocessed foods. We began making our own foods from scratch. And honestly, we've never stopped. It was fun and it was exciting to make that switch. It was kind of this novel idea for us. And within a few weeks, we noticed a huge difference in our health. We lost a lot of bloat and water retention. We felt so much better. We had so much more energy. We had better skin, higher sex drive, mental clarity. It was kind of like the best way to cleanse before we decided to have kids. So this was us making pies and making bread, and honestly, it's become just our way of life now. Where back then it was so new. Um, so we were blessed to get pregnant pretty quickly when we decided to have kids. And throughout the pregnancy, I continued to learn more and more about the hidden toxic chemicals in our food and everyday environment. So you can see in the top picture with me making eggs on a camping trip, I was like 5 weeks pregnant and so sick. But I was so happy because we were ready. We had been together for a long time, happy to be having babies. But the more that I learned, the more overwhelmed I started to feel. I always say I felt like I had this precious, innocent, pure little baby growing inside of me, and I felt so responsible to keep him safe. I suffered through the morning sickness, through headaches, and an awful cold that I refused to take any medicine for. Why? Well, I was scared of what it could potentially do to Luke, my little baby inside of me. I had no idea what those big words on the ingredients list were and how they could affect my unborn child, so I steered clear of them. It was during the last few months of my pregnancy that a friend introduced me to essential oils and Young Living. We were doing an overnight event with our youth group at church, and I was so stuffed up with a cold that I couldn't breathe. And so a friend, she saw me suffering, and she went and she got me a hot cup of water and put some oils in it, told me to cup my hands around it and just smell and breathe it in. And I trusted this friend and her super like crunchy hippie ways. And I gave it a try. And within 10 minutes, I went from being completely stuffed up, not being able to breathe, to this huge release, just like blowing my nose and getting all the guck out. And I was amazed that this stuff actually worked. I was a huge skeptic, but it actually worked. So I went home and my crazy type A personality came to the forefront as I started researching essential oils. To save time, let me just say that no other company could come close to Young Living's quality, but I still didn't think I needed them, and I just kind of let things be. So a few weeks before Luke was born, at a baby shower, a friend gifted me a bottle of Peace and Calming, and I remember smelling it and thinking, gross, there's no way I'm going to let my baby smell like that, and I stashed it away. But if only I had known. So I survived my pregnancy, survived, and was ready for Luke to arrive. I had only natural materials and fibers in our little nursery. I only allowed natural wooden toys in the house. I had like Castile soap ready and waiting. I was a natural mama, knowing I didn't want any chemicals near my baby. I was blessed to make it through the whole pregnancy and birth without using any medicine at all, other than that smelling that essential oil. I did my very best to ensure that he was as toxic free as possible. But there's one problem. Toxic chemicals are impossible to completely avoid. Try as I will, control freak that I was, I couldn't avoid it all. They're in the air that we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, the soil our food is grown in, and of course, they're in common mass-marketed everyday household products. From the cleaners we scrub our homes with and breathe in to the cosmetics and bodily care products that we put on our bodies, the average woman puts 515 synthetic chemicals on her body each and every day. 60% of what we put on our body gets absorbed into our bodies in less than 26 seconds, by the way. What goes on our bodies goes in our bodies. And what goes in our bodies affects our growing little babies and fetuses. So I had detoxified my home as much as I could, or as much as I knew at the time, while I was pregnant, but I couldn't detoxify my workplace or what I was exposed to in the environment. So here's little Luke, brand new and born, but the Environmental Working Group found that in a study that they did in 2009, and Luke was born in 2012, that there were over 287 different chemicals in the average baby's umbilical cord blood. 180 of those chemicals are known to cause cancer in humans, and 217 are toxic to the brain and nervous system. So before this brand new baby had even lived an hour on the earth, he was already contaminated. It's heartbreaking to know that I couldn't protect him from that, and I get the mama guilt because of that. I just didn't know. But I could be the gatekeeper of my home. I could protect him in my little shelter that we created at home. I continued to eat as good as I could since I was breastfeeding him, and what I ate would go through my milk to him. So we jokingly say that we're pretentious eaters. We became gluten-free, dairy-free, processed sugar-free, non-GMO, etc., but really for good reason, because of the chemicals and pesticides and sides, like that video said, in our food. So this list is the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. This came from the David Suzuki website. But basically, if you are buying your own food, you want to steer clear of conventionally grown strawberries, apples, nectarines, like that Dirty Dozen list. Steer clear of that and definitely try to get organic if at all possible. Because guys, I was on a budget. When I chose not to go back to work after having Luke, we were living on Mitch's salary in our big house in Riverview, and we were on a tight budget. So the Clean 15 are ones that you don't necessarily have to buy organic. But the Dirty Dozen, please at all costs, try to do that. Because the use of pesticides, herbicides, and chemical fillers and colorants in modern day foods is basically pervasive. It's everywhere. And like I said, I know that buying organic food can be expensive, but it's really, really important. So this is the list that we kind of abided by. We always bought organic when it came to the foods under the Dirty Dozen, but the Clean 15, not so necessary. So studies have linked pesticides in our food to everything from headaches to cancer to birth defects, but many experts maintain that the levels in conventional food are safe for most healthy adults. But even low-level pesticide exposure can be significantly more toxic for babies and children due to their less developed immune systems. And for pregnant women, it puts added strain on their already taxed organs. So if you're pregnant or if you have babies, give them all the clean organic stuff. And that information came from the National Academy of Sciences. Petrochemicals like glyphosate that are sprayed in our province are killing our environment, our wildlife populations, and are entering our water system. Just think of what happened in the Turtle Creek watershed here in the Moncton area a few years ago. The World Health Organization has deemed glyphosate as a probable carcinogen. That means it's probably going to give you cancer. So even what your water, where you're getting your water from, is really important. I invested in a Berkey filter years ago, even though it was expensive, but water is life, and I wanted to make sure that we were getting clean water for our kids. Okay, so back to Luke being about 5 months old. As you can see here, he was a little bit older in this picture, but 5 months old, he was teething, and no amount of mama's milk was helping. And if you're a breastfeeding mama, when in doubt, feed, and it solved all the problems. Well, it wasn't helping. So after hours of crying and exhaustion for both of us, I broke down and I gave him his one and only dose that he's ever had of baby Tylenol. And instantaneously, the guilt just hit me. Like, what had I done? And combine hormones and exhaustion and the stress of having a crying baby all at the same time, I broke down in tears. What did I put into my precious baby? So I messaged my friend at like 5 o'clock in the morning, begging her for a healthier alternative. She gave me an oily solution, and I was hesitant at first, but I was desperate, and I knew that it had to be better than what I was giving him. or what I had given them. So it was then that I finally took the plunge and I started to learn more about essential oils instead of just like these odd things here and there. I was like, okay, there's something to these. These actually work. Let me really find out some information about them. So I vowed to myself that I would never again be unprepared. And every nap time and every feeding from then on, I devoted myself to learning more about essential oils and how they could help my baby. Well, it was doing that research that made me realize that in today's world, some of the most dangerous things that affect our health are things we willingly expose ourselves to on a daily basis. And some of those things might not be what you expect. In fact, you might even be completely oblivious to the fact that the products that we use on ourselves, in our homes, on our children, and in our everyday lives could be the very things that are contributing to why we're sick, why we're having health problems, why we struggle emotionally, why we are not living a life full of wellness, purpose, and abundance. So bear with me. Let's delve into this a little more. Not all chemicals are harmful. I will say that because I always get, well, water is a chemical. Everything is a chemical. I understand that. But you know what I mean when I say chemicals. You're thinking toxins, right? So not all chemicals are harmful. Our bodies are made up of chemicals. Water is a chemical. Some chemicals like essential oils improve our health. Our bodies are designed with amazing filtration systems. Our liver and kidneys are there for a reason. They are there to get the bad stuff out of our bodies. However, the problem is that in today's society, those two filtration systems are getting overloaded, and what's happening is chemicals begin to accumulate in our bodies over time. And this is called bioaccumulation. So the toxins build up, and the impacts of them may not show up until long after our exposure to them. In fact, some of the chemicals that pregnant women are exposed to won't show up until 3 generations from now. I really encourage you to Google epigenetics. It's really, really fascinating. So what we do now doesn't only affect us and our children, it affects our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. So this is really important. You may be thinking to yourselves, but I don't use many products, or I don't eat a lot of processed foods, or I ate that and I'm okay. Well, active chemicals in products are measured in parts per billion range. So what does that mean? What does a parts per billion look like? Imagine half a teaspoon of red food coloring poured into an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Doesn't sound like very much, does it? But even at tiny doses, they can be potent. So for example, a NuvaRing at 0.035 parts per billion can prevent conception. Albuterol at 2.1 parts per billion can stop an asthma attack. And a tiny amount of an active chemical can have a big effect on the body. So looking at things like the total load, the total number of burdens that are involved in causing disease or preventing you from staying well is really important. So yes, you may just get a little bit of exposure from one thing and a little exposure from another, but together that all compiles on top of each other and that body burden hits you. In Canada, there are some laws that limit the amount of a particular chemical in our product. In isolation, a chemical can be relatively safe, but when it's combined with those other ingredients that contain other chemicals that are originally safe chemicals, that very first chemical is no longer safe. So even though it may be safe by itself, when we add a different chemical to it, it's not so safe any longer. It becomes like a chemical cocktail. It's this cocktail effect, the combination of pesticides and plastics and cosmetics and preservatives, et cetera, that is wreaking havoc on our bodies and our brains. Our liver and our kidneys cannot cope with the onslaught of toxins that they're being asked to filter. So continuous exposure to these toxins lead us to that total load or body burden, the accumulated total of chemicals in our bodies that now set the stage for major health problems. So let's learn about some of these chemicals and why you should avoid them like the plague. Okay, so again, this comes from David Suzuki's website. This is personal care products. You can see the dirty dozen. We had the dirty dozen of food. Well, this is the dirty dozen in the cosmetic industry of things that you should try to avoid at all costs. Okay, we don't have time to talk about them all individually, but I want to pick out a few that are really important because they're everywhere and they're really dangerous and they can have a profound effect on our health. So let's start with fragrance. I was the queen of fragrance in my early adolescence and adulthood. Body sprays and, aluminum filled deodorant and hairsprays, all of that type of thing was my life. I was an athlete and I didn't always have time to shower between practice or a game and class and things like that. So fragrance was the thing that made me, able to be sat beside in class. I loved smelling good. And when Mitch and I first bought our home, I was working at Wheaton's and I could get Yankee candles, like the big jar candles, at a quarter of the price as a regular retail customer. So my new house had a different big jar candle in every single room, like harvest apple and clean linen and cinnamon stick. Like you name it, I had it. I loved fleecy sheets, original Tide laundry soap. The smell of fresh laundry like just brought me joy. I had like the Bath and Body Works hand soap at every sink. But when you know better, you do better. And as I learned more about fragrance and the damage that it causes, I overhauled my home and I got rid of them all. The more I distanced myself from the use of synthetic scents, the more sensitive I became. So you can see here some of the issues that fragrance are related to. Sometimes fragrance is listed as like perfume, but PARFUM on a bottle. And in fact, it's not just one ingredient. It's an umbrella term that secretly hides over 3,000 different chemicals. Fragrance recipes are considered trade secrets, so manufacturers are not required to disclose fragrance chemicals in their ingredients list. It's in nearly every type of personal care and cleaning product. Even those products that are marked as fragrance-free or unscented may in fact contain fragrance, but they also contain a masking chemical that prevents the brain from actually perceiving the smell or the odor. So, of the thousands of chemicals used in fragrances, most haven't even been tested for toxicity alone or in combination. Many of these unlisted ingredients are irritants and can cause allergies, migraines, asthma, and more. So, you know that we live out here in the country, but one of the things that I remember about living in our old neighborhood is that on a hot day like we had today, I could get an instant headache from the smell of laundry in the air. The smell that used to bring me so much joy. If I smelled it, if I was walking by or if I was in the backyard with the kids, that smell just would hit me and it'd feel like my lungs were closing up and I'd get a massive, massive headache. And even Luke and Lachlan, I remember them playing outside and they'd say that they were feeling funny, mummy. So fragrance is a known carcinogen. So let me ask you, how many people here, you can pop it in the comments, know somebody who has had cancer? Cancer is the number 2 cause of death in our country. 3 out of my 4 grandparents suffered and died as the result of cancer-related illnesses. The American Cancer Society says that only 5 to 10% of all cancer cases are from gene defects. That means 90 to 95% of cancer cases are under our control. So avoiding fragrance and its 3,000 chemicals, to me, I feel like that is absolutely vital. Here are a couple little stats here. Childhood cancer is the most common disease-related cause of death for children right now. So in our good intentions to make them smell good and, buy that baby ivory laundry soap and buy all the pink baby lotions and all the things that are out there, sadly, we're exposing our babies to carcinogens that the government can't regulate or doesn't regulate for us. So we have to be the gatekeepers ourselves. So scary stuff. Moving on to other ones, phthalates. Phthalates are also used as fragrance ingredients. Phthalates are used to keep plastics flexible and not breakable. So any soft plastics like soothers and teething toys and soft foam mats. But here's the good thing. Health Canada recently announced regulations banning 6 phthalates, including DBP, which is one of the worst ones that are out there, in children's toys. And evidence suggests that exposure to those things may cause liver and kidney failure in young children who suck or chew on them for long periods of time. But its use in cosmetics is unrestricted. So DBP phthalate is absorbed through the skin and can enhance the capacity of other chemicals to cause genetic mutations. It causes developmental defects, and the European Union classifies it as an endocrine disruptor. So what's an endocrine disruptor? Here's our endocrine system. Endocrine disruptors are also sometimes known as gender benders, and they interfere with the body's endocrine system. So they produce adverse developmental, reproductive, neurological, and immune effects. Look at all the internal structures that they would affect. If you suffer from thyroid problems or adrenal fatigue, for example, then it's more than likely because your endocrine system has been affected by chemicals like phthalates and others from that dirty dozen list. Phthalates, along with 6 other categories of chemicals, have been proven to disrupt brain development. We live in a day and age where 1 in 6 children have a developmental disability, including ADHD and autism, learning disabilities, and developmental delays. So it's a huge deal. Autism is on the rise. Not saying that they're officially linked, but I have my suspicions. 1 in 12 youth in Canada right now have been dispensed mood or anxiety and antipsychotic medication, and I think that number is probably even more now considering the pandemic and what we've heard in the news in recent months. I believe that something has to change. Our kids can't suffer like this any longer. The European also classifies DBP phthalates as being a chemical that may cause harm to the unborn child and impair fertility. So these were some fertility rates that were kind of shocking. It's getting harder and harder for women to get pregnant this day and age. The infertility rate for women ages 18 to 44 was over 15.7% in the year 2010. And when I did this presentation a few years ago, so less than 10 years later, it was close to the 20% range. So I have been blessed to have been had conversations with many, many women who have desperately wanted to have babies, but have struggled to conceive. And it's heartbreaking to hear their stories, and they're so deserving and they would make great parents, but the struggle has been so difficult. But let's say you're finally able to conceive after months and years of trying. But the current research states that 33% of pregnancies in Canada end in miscarriage. I know so many young women who struggle with infertility. I know too many moms who have suffered the loss of a child through miscarriage. The heartache that they have had to endure is life-changing. It's something no one should have to go through. And the fact that a baby's life could be saved simply by ridding the world of phthalates tells me just where our society's priorities are. Corporate greed over ethics. So, speaking of corporate greed, did you know that a common ingredient in antibacterial soaps and hand sanitizers and toothpaste that's supposed to keep you healthy and protect against germs actually suppresses your immune system? This is really important because triclosan is hidden in a lot of products, a lot of antibacterial products. So right now during the pandemic, be careful of which hand sanitizers and sanitizing wipes and things you are using because they could very well contain triclosan. Okay, so for me, it's like, isn't that just like a money-hungry company, though, to sell you a product with the guise of keeping you healthy so that when it actually makes you sicker, you go out and buy more of this product? This is exactly what happens with the products containing triclosan. The Canadian Medical Association has called for a ban on triclosan-filled products, but their pleas have largely been ignored. So even though the Canadian Medical Association wants it, Health Canada still says it's safe. So it's really frustrating and really maddening, and I just get so angry. But a similar situation occurs with feminine hygiene products, ladies. Maxi pads and tampons, they contain dioxin, which, believe it or not, is a byproduct of triclosan mixing with chlorine, a chemical that actually causes your periods to be heavier, for you to bleed more for longer, so that you have to go out and buy more pads and tampons. Dioxin, by the way, is a known carcinogen. And what's the second most common cancer that we women get? Cervical cancer. Well, no wonder we are putting dioxin-filled products up our hoo-has and expecting our bodies just to cope. So I first learned about dioxin after the first few weeks of Luke's life. This was him really early. You can see he's just in a conventional like Huggies or Pampers diaper. But he broke out in the worst diaper rash. I tried every possible brand of mainstream disposable diapers and nothing worked. So one night while letting his sore, raw bum air out, diaper-free before bed, I was researching and learned that dioxin is in disposable diapers. It's an endocrine disruptor and a known carcinogen. Well, that night I ordered nearly $1,500 worth of natural organic bamboo cloth diapers, and within 3 days of them arriving and switching over to them, his diaper rash was gone. So even though dioxin isn't on the dirty dozen list, it's important for us to talk about especially as moms, which a lot of you are, and women in general, we have diapers for our babies, and I jokingly call them diapers for us too. Okay, so when we see this word, formaldehyde, I think of grade 10 science class and the smell of dissecting a frog or a pig, right? Well, can you believe that it is commonly used as a preservative in a wide range of our cosmetics? It even was used during this picture. This is Luke on the day that he was born. First soap that bathed my baby at the hospital was Johnson's baby soap. I had a massively traumatic birth with him, and try as I may, I did not get control over that first bath. I was getting stitched up in the nether regions at that moment in time. Johnson & Johnson's baby soap is full of formaldehyde. It's also in vinyl flooring, plastics, toilet bowl cleaners. Formaldehyde can off-gas and be inhaled and can be absorbed through the skin. So Health Canada recognizes and recommends that we should eliminate and, at the very least, reduce as many sources of formaldehyde as possible. It is restricted as an ingredient in cosmetics, with only a low level being allowed. But again, it bioaccumulates over time. It adds up and it adds up, so much so that in fact that dead bodies are decomposing at a much slower rate than in previous generations because of the formaldehyde that's stored in their bodies is preserving them, just like those dead frogs and piggies from science class. Pretty gross, right? So those are just a handful of chemicals that it's vital to avoid. Again, I really encourage you to check out the David Suzuki website. It's a great source for information on those other dirty dozen chemicals that I had listed. And for me, when you know better, you do better. This picture is the morning after my second baby was born. This was at home. I had Lachlan as a home birth. That was about 8 o'clock in the morning. Mom arrived from Miramichi to visit us, and this is where we were. I was at home with Gentle Baby essential oil in my diffuser and Thieves Cleaner on the household surface. And what a huge difference from this picture to this picture, right? So I really want people to start shifting that paradigm and thinking about the value of taking care of your family. Have you ever heard the saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure? Well, we can stop treating symptoms and start supporting systems by investing in our health, eliminating toxins and chemicals in our life, and flooding the body with nutrients and plant-based ingredients instead. While I'm definitely not saying you should quit taking medications or going to the doctor, modern medicine is amazing. It is, and it absolutely holds a vital place in this world. I'm simply saying that there are essential oils and products that you could be using that will support a healthy body and maintain a level of ultimate wellness. And while I'm not a doctor myself, obviously, we don't have to be medical professionals to make better decisions for our health and the health of our families. There's nothing more important and precious to us than our babies and our children. And to me, they are totally worth fighting for. We can't control everything that happens in our children's lives, but we can control what kind of products we expose them to, whether they are good or bad. And while we make mistakes as parents in raising our children, I do that daily, we know that using products that are chemical free is one decision that we can make for our children that is perfectly right in every way. Thanks for bearing with me. Thanks for listening. I crave a simple life where we don't have to worry about chemicals that are in every little thing around us. And I really truly believe with enough of us doing it, we can make a huge difference in the lives of our children and the health of our children. So thank you again for tuning in. I hope that you all are surviving this heat wave. If you would like to know more about healthy living, non-toxic living, food, whether it be Young Living products or DIY products, I am super passionate about sharing what's worked for me through the years. And I hope that maybe if it's just one of you that listens to this, that you'll start to make some changes in your life for the health of your children. So thanks for tuning in, guys. I'm going to end this right now.